"Your mother gave away the house," the banker said. Mike froze. "To who?" "To her nurse. It's legally done." Trina's jaw dropped. "But where her children?" Across town, June stirred her tea. Calm, unbothered. They wanted her gone. She left them with nothing. "Wait, before we go any further, I gotta ask, where are you watching from?" Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. The applause didn't come until the front door latched. It wasn't loud, just a soft ripple, like the end of a dinner toast. But June heard it. She paused on the front steps, her hand still resting on the wood-carved banister Daniel had installed himself the summer after their second baby. Through the door, she caught the faint clink of a glass hitting another, a brief whoop, then silence. She stood there a moment longer, keys in hand, although they no longer led to anything she would return to. "I'll grab the last box," said Mike behind her, voice too cheery. "You sure you don't want to ride with Trina? Her SUV's more comfortable." "I'll take the shuttle," June replied. She didn't look at him. She didn't have to. She could hear the relief behind his tone, like a man who'd finally crossed something off his to-do list. Inside the house, Trina was already rearranging throw pillows. Jenna's voice floated out from the kitchen. "I think we'll do a soft sage in the living room. Neutral's better for resale." June stepped onto the walkway without turning back. She didn't want them to see her hesitate. Her new studio apartment smelled like lemon cleaner and someone else's overcooked oatmeal. It was small, polished laminate floors, a twin bed, a sink that sighed when you turned it on. But the window faced west, and at 4:12 that afternoon, golden light spilled across the floor in soft squares. June unpacked slowly, methodically. She hung a photo of Daniel in the kitchenette and pressed her palm once against the frame. "We did good," she said, then sat on the bed and let the silence settle around her shoulders. Her tablet buzzed. Group chat. "She's in." Trina had sent a selfie of the siblings in June's empty living room, holding plastic champagne flutes. The caption read, "Freedom at last, share empty nest 2.0. June blinked. Below it, a thread unfolded. "Mike, now we can finally clear that equity line." Jenna, "I'm already meeting a realtor Tuesday." Trina, "Don't tell her yet. She's technically gone, but not legally." Jenna, "She's a liability now. Let's just keep things moving." June scrolled down with hands that didn't shake, but felt suddenly very far away from the warm light in the room. A liability. Technically gone. Equity line. She put the tablet face down on the bed. Her breath came steady, but her spine straightened just slightly. The next morning, June pulled the black leather binder from the bottom of her suitcase. It was heavier than she remembered. She hadn't opened it since Daniel's funeral. Her children had asked for copies of the will, of course. "Just for clarity," they said, "so nothing gets confused down the line." She had let them talk, but she hadn't handed them everything. She placed the binder on the table and flipped it open to the property tab, still bookmarked with Daniel's monogrammed paperclip. There it was. Title holder, June E. Marston. Status, sole ownership. No encumbrance, no lien, no transfer. They had moved her out like a widow being packed for winter storage. But the house? The house was still hers, and they'd forgotten that. Her finger hovered over the contact tab. She tapped it. Benjamin Rosen, estate attorney, cell, director. She stared at the number, then reached across the table for the cordless phone the facility provided. Its buttons were large, easy to see, designed for someone who might one day forget which end was up. She remembered just fine. The dial tone buzzed in her ear. She didn't call yet. Not today. Instead, she whispered one sentence to herself, soft and certain. "I'm still here." June opens her estate binder and flips to the deed, still in her name alone. The binder still sat on the kitchenette table, the spine creased open to the deed like a dare. June hadn't moved it since last night. The name on that page, her name, held more weight now than it ever had when she and Daniel signed the mortgage. Back then, it had been a promise. Now, it was armor. She walked past it like it wasn't calling to her, poured herself a cup of weak facility coffee, and returned to the chair by the window. The autumn light filtered through sheer curtains, brushing her lap with gold. She sipped, then smiled at the bitterness. They thought they'd emptied her out when they packed her boxes, but they forgot she still held the keys to everything they wanted. The house hadn't always been valuable, not in the way Mike talked about equity potential or Jenna brought up comp build-outs. It was a modest 2-story, painted slate blue with white trim and creaky gutters that Daniel refused to replace. They bought it in 1978 for less than a fraction of what Mike's bathroom remodel cost. It came with drafty windows, a slanted driveway, and more love than either of them knew how to hold at the time. They had fixed it piece by piece. June stitched curtains. Daniel learned plumbing the hard way. Every dent in the kitchen tile had a story. Every scratch in the hardwood held laughter or heartbreak, or both. Once, when Jenna was 12 and grounded, she'd carved, "I hate this stupid house," into the back of her closet wall. June had painted over it, but she never forgot it was there. She thought of that now as she tapped her phone and scrolled through old photos. The porch swing Daniel hung. The rosebush he planted for their 30th anniversary. The kitchen, yellow in the morning sun, where she taught Trina how to fold pie crust without tearing it. And yet, what did Jenna say the day June moved out? "We'll fix it up and flip it. Easier than splitting it 3 ways." She hadn't even whispered it. She said it like it was strategy, like June was already 6 feet under. The phone buzzed in her lap. A text from Mike. "Meeting Dabuza, the mortgage guy, Friday. We'll loop you in soon." Soon. Like she was a loose end. Not the anchor. June didn't reply. Instead, she picked up the landline and dialed Benjamin Rosen. "Still hypothetical?" Benjamin asked after she explained, again, what she was thinking. June paused. "Less and less." "Well, here's what you need to know," he said. "You still hold title. That house is yours free and clear. If you want to transfer it to someone, you can. You don't need their consent, not even notice." Would they find out? Eventually, when they try to move money that doesn't exist anymore. June didn't smile, but her hand stopped shaking. "And if I wanted it to be permanent?" "Then we go non-revocable," Benjamin said. "No reversals, no probate drama, no family challenges unless they can prove duress. And you don't exactly seem fragile, June." "I had a stroke," she said. "And now you're sharp enough to ask me how to outflank your own kids. That's not fragility, that's strategic recovery." She exhaled through her nose. "I don't want revenge." "Of course not. I just want them to stop treating me like a dead woman with paperwork." There was a pause on the other end. The kind lawyers took before saying something they couldn't take back. "With a non-revocable deed," Benjamin said carefully, "they'd never see it coming." June looked out the window again. Leaves fell in slow spirals onto the grass below. Somewhere downstairs, someone's television blared a rerun laugh track too loud. She closed the binder gently, and then, deliberately, she reached for a blank yellow legal pad. At the top she wrote, "Contingency plan, if they push further." Benjamin replies, "With a non-revocable deed, they'd never see it coming." The words "contingency plan" were still fresh on the yellow legal pad when June's phone buzzed again. She didn't move to answer it right away, just stared at it as it pulsed on the table beside her half-eaten toast. The vibration seemed louder than it should have been, too bright for the muted calm of her studio apartment. It was a group message. Trina again. "Look what we did with the foyer. It's already brighter." Attached was a photo of her front entryway, gutted down to the subfloor. The oak bench Daniel had built by hand was gone. The floral rug she'd vacuumed every Saturday had been rolled away. On the walls, primer bled through where her framed family photos used to hang. June blinked slowly. She hadn't asked for renovations. She hadn't even given them permission to enter. 3 more pictures followed by noon. The curtains in the dining room were down, replaced with bare rods and plastic tarps. The wallpaper in the upstairs hall, delicate green vines that took her and Daniel 2 weeks to hang, had been stripped like it was peeling paint. Mike stood in the background of one shot, thumbs up beside a contractor holding a paint roller. Jenna chimed in next. "We figured we'd get ahead of the updates before they're needed. Adds value. You'll thank us later." June pressed her thumb against the bridge of her nose. Her head ached, not from confusion, but from clarity. She had known they were vultures. She hadn't expected them to start pecking before the body was cold. She didn't call them. She didn't text. Instead, she opened her browser and logged into her bank's property monitoring portal. Her name still held sole ownership on the title. Good. No recent liens or pending transfers. Even better. Then she opened her email and typed in a single sentence to her banker. Is my property showing up in any active listings yet? June Marston. She hit send and waited. Later that afternoon, as she folded a basket of laundry in the community room, her phone pinged again. This time, it wasn't from her children. It was from Diane, her neighbor of 25 years and one of the few people still brave enough to call without pretense. The message had no greeting, just a photo. In it, Mike stood in the driveway beside a woman in high heels and a blazer, gesturing broadly at the front of the house. A stack of flyers peeked out of the realtor's open tote bag, the kind you hand out at open houses. Diane's caption read, "Thought you should see this. Didn't know the place was for sale." June stared at the image, her pulse steady, her thoughts screaming. Not listed yet, but close enough to smell it. She clicked the photo open, zoomed in on Mike's arm, pointing not at the siding, not at the roof, but toward the rose bush Daniel planted for their 30th anniversary. That's when she felt it. Not rage, not grief, certainty. Back in her room, she opened her laptop again, navigated to Zillow, typed in her old address with fingers that didn't tremble. Nothing appeared. She exhaled. Then, a blue banner popped up at the top of the screen. Your home may be listed in your area. View market activity near 14 Windmere Drive. She gets a notification from Zillow. Your home may be listed in your area. It felt less like a prompt and more like a warning shot. She hadn't responded. She didn't need to. She already knew what came next. It was time to choose who got the house, before her kids tried to sell what wasn't yet theirs. Not out of vengeance, but out of responsibility. They wanted profit. She wanted preservation. She began quietly, not with spreadsheets or checklists, but observation, listening, noticing who showed up when no one asked them to. The boutique facility had a revolving door of staff, weekenders, temps, aides who didn't learn your name unless it was written on your meds. But one woman never had to check a chart twice. Angela, CNA, late 30s, always wore scrubs with cartoon socks underneath. Her voice was soft, but she moved like someone who had to keep going, whether she had energy or not. June first noticed her during breakfast rounds. While other aides dropped trays like they were running a race, Angela set each one down like it belonged there. Plates centered, napkin folded once, coffee placed to the right, not the left. It was nothing, but it wasn't. A few days later, June pretended to need help reaching a blanket on the top shelf. Angela knocked first. Mind if I come in? You're already here, June smiled. Angela chuckled. Right. As she pulled the blanket down, June spotted the faded edge of a tattoo near her wrist, just the tail end of a feather. Angela noticed her looking. Got it back when I thought I'd have wings by 30, she said. Do you? June asked. Angela folded the blanket slowly. Most days I have feet. That's enough. They talked, not all at once, but often. Angela never lingered too long. She was respectful like that. But over the course of a week, June learned more about her than she'd known about her own daughter in years. Angela had 2 kids, ages 9 and 12, both in public school, both kind. No contact with their father. Pandemic hit hard. They'd been evicted 2 years ago and spent 6 months crashing with relatives, then motels, then a church friend's garage. Now they rented a 2-bedroom behind a laundromat. It's not fancy, Angela had said, but it's safe, and we laugh a lot. That counts. It did. More than square footage ever would. On a Tuesday afternoon, after Angela helped her adjust her phone's font size, June asked without ceremony, Ever dreamed of owning a house? Angela blinked. What? June sipped her tea. I mean it. Have you ever pictured it? What it'd look like? Smell like? Where you'd put the broom closet? Angela laughed, but it was tight in the chest. Not defensive, just fragile. That's not even on my radar, she said finally. You don't dream like that when you're just trying to stay caught up on rent. June studied her for a long beat. No makeup. Eyes tired but kind, shoulders square, even when carrying the weight of 2 lives. "That's a shame," June said softly, "because I think a house would look good on you." Angela laughs nervously and says, "That's not even on my radar." Angela's voice still echoed in June's thoughts. "That's not even on my radar." Not sad, not bitter, just honest. That kind of honesty didn't come from weakness. It came from living through the kind of storms that teach you not to build dreams without anchors. It told June everything she needed. 2 days later, June stood in Benjamin's office, the morning sun making a crosshatch pattern on the wood floor. His legal assistant had already laid out the paperwork: deed transfer, survivorship clause, cognitive capacity statement, but one page sat alone, clipped to a salmon-colored file. Benjamin tapped it once. "Here's where we add it." June read it silently. Her pen hovered above the line. Clause 7A. Transferor retains right to restrict resale or refinancing of property for up to 10 years post-transfer. "I want it locked in," she said. "No loopholes. No third-party buyouts. No accidental signatures." Benjamin nodded. "That clause makes it ironclad. She can live in it, maintain it, raise her family, but she can't flip it or mortgage it for a decade." "Good," June signed. "I've seen a lot of trust terms," Benjamin added, watching her carefully. "Most people use restrictions out of fear. You're using it like scaffolding." June smiled faintly. "If you hand someone a house too fast, it might feel like a favor. I want it to feel like a foundation." Angela arrived 10 minutes later, still in her scrubs, keys jangling in her nervous hands. "I'm sorry, I rushed from work," she said. "Am I late?" "You're right on time," June said, rising slowly from the leather chair. "In more ways than one." Angela scanned the stack of papers, her eyes widening as she realized what was happening. Benjamin explained everything with practiced patience. The deed, the clause, the conditions. Her name, spelled out in capital letters, stared back at her from line 12. "You're giving me a house," she whispered. "Not lending, not co-signing, giving." "Yes," June said. Angela swallowed. "But I can't sell it for 10 years?" "You won't want to," June replied. "That home's not a springboard, it's a seed. Grow something with it." Angela's hands trembled as she picked up the pen. "I can't promise I'll get everything right," she said. "You don't need to," June said softly. "You just need to stay." When the final page was signed, Benjamin sealed the folder and pushed it forward. "Congratulations, it's official. You're a homeowner." Angela let out a breath like it had been lodged in her for years. She stood and threw her arms around June before she could talk herself out of it. "I swear to you," Angela whispered, "I will never forget this." June returned the embrace with quiet grace. "Good. Neither will they." That evening, back in her studio, June removed the old Family Legacy tab from her estate binder. She replaced it with a new one labeled in clean handwriting, "Transferred, with conditions." Behind it, the deed, the survivorship clause, and the 10-year restriction. They'd tried to rush her into invisibility. She'd just made herself legally unforgettable. The next call came at 6:42 p.m. She let it ring once before answering. "Hey, Mom," Mike said breezily. "We're about to meet with the mortgage guy tomorrow. Just need a quick signature from you on the home equity line, all basic stuff." June walked to the window, where the sunset hit the sill like a fading spotlight. "Funny," she said. "I don't recall being the homeowner anymore." A beat of silence. Then cautious laughter. "Come on, Mom. Of course you're still—" "Wait, what?" June's voice didn't change. "You'll want to talk to Angela Ruiz. I believe she's listed as the owner of record now." Mike's silence on the other end of the call lasted just long enough for June to finish stirring her tea. The clink of the spoon was soft, deliberate. "You're joking, right?" he said finally. "Mom, this isn't funny." She didn't answer, just lifted her cup, blew gently across the surface, and took a slow sip. Mike's voice sharpened. "Seriously, what are you talking about, new owner? You can't just give a house away, it's not a sweater." "I didn't give it away," she said evenly. "I transferred it. There's a difference." "To who?" June smiled faintly. "You'll find out soon enough." And then she hung up. By 8 a.m. the next morning, her phone was already flashing with calls. Trina, then Jenna, then Mike again. She didn't answer any of them. Instead, she opened the facility's community calendar and circled Tai Chi on the patio in light pencil. Let them sweat. At the bank, the Whitman siblings came armed. Mike wore his negotiation jacket, the same one he used for property closings. Trina carried a leather folder marked Home Equity Refi, Winmere. Jenna joined via speakerphone, barking in from her car. Their loan officer, Alec, young and too polite for what was coming, greeted them with a half smile and a folder clutched a little too tightly. "Hi, thanks for coming in," he said, guiding them to a small glass-walled meeting room. "I had our title clerk pull up the property record before we start. Standard procedure." Mike leaned back confidently. "Sure, it's clean. Been in the family for 40 years. Our mother's on title. We're just unlocking equity to speed up some renovations." Alec opened his folder. He blinked once, then again. I'm afraid that's not what the record shows anymore." Trina sat forward. "Excuse me?" "The property was transferred 6 days ago to an Angela Ruiz, filed via quitclaim deed with a non-revocable clause and a resale restriction for 10 years. Mike laughed, confused. That's a mistake. There's no way." Jenna's voice crackled from the phone. "Who the hell is Angela Ruiz?" Alec cleared his throat. "I don't know who she is, but she's the owner of record now. Your mother no longer holds title. That means we can't process your loan request." Mike's posture deflated, shoulders slumping like a collapsed tent. "This has to be reversed. We just talked to our mom. There's no way she—" Alec's voice cooled. "The paperwork is clean, notarized, time-stamped, and filed by a licensed attorney. This isn't something we can override." Trina said nothing for a full 5 seconds. Then she stood. "We need to go," she said, her voice clipped. "Now." Meanwhile, back at the facility, June sat at a sun-drenched table near the east window, her crossword half-finished and a lemon cookie untouched beside her tea. Angela passed by, nudging her shoulder affectionately. "Everything okay?" June smiled. "Just fine. Beautiful day, isn't it?" Neither of them mentioned the firestorm likely raging in a glass office across town. At 3:43 p.m., her tablet buzzed. It was a FaceTime request. Trina. June accepted it with a slow inhale. Her daughter's face appeared on screen, tense and flushed. "Mom, we need to talk." June raised an eyebrow. "You're talking? You gave away the house?" Trina's voice cracked. "To someone we don't even know? Without even telling us?" June sipped her tea, unbothered. "I knew you'd find out soon enough." Trina's face twisted. "You can't do that. You weren't in the right frame of mind." "I was in exactly the frame of mind you helped me into." Trina hesitated. Are you even okay?" June smiled politely. "You're very welcome to find out." She ended the call. 30 seconds later, 3 phones lit up in sync. Trina. "We need to get her evaluated. She's not thinking clearly." June set her tablet down with careful hands. She didn't sigh. She didn't fume. She simply turned her lemon cookie over once on the napkin, then pushed it aside. The next move was obvious. It always was with her children. When they couldn't control something, they questioned its legitimacy. It came the next afternoon. A knock on her suite door, softer than staff usually used. She opened it to a tall woman in her 50s with gray-streaked curls and the kind of shoes worn by people who walk hallways for a living. "Mrs. Whitman, I'm Valerie Benson. I'm a licensed cognitive care evaluator. Would you mind if I came in?" June stepped aside. "Let me guess. Wellness check?" Valerie smiled tightly. "Just a brief visit. A family member raised a concern." June didn't ask who. She already knew. Valerie set her tablet down on the small kitchen island. Her tone was warm but studied, like a therapist pretending to be casual. "I just want to ask you a few questions today. Nothing invasive. Just making sure you're oriented and supported." "I'm not lost," June replied calmly. "But go ahead." They started with the basics. Name, date, year. Check. Current location. Check. Who's the president? Unfortunately. Check. Then came the memory sequence. 5 random words to repeat later. then picture interpretation, then 3 steps in a row. Stand up, turn once, touch your nose. June did each one like she was teaching a yoga class. Halfway through, Valerie paused. "May I ask why your children were concerned?" June tilted her head. "Because I didn't hand them something they never earned." Valerie blinked. "The house?" June didn't answer. She looked out the window at a robin hopping along the ledge. "Do you know what they did after my husband's funeral? They priced the backyard fence before they watered my garden." Valerie made a note on her tablet. "You seem very lucid." "I'm not interested in seeming," June said. "I'm interested in being." When the test concluded, Valerie looked at her without a script. "Mrs. Whitman, you're sharp, clear, defensive, but in a way that tells me you've had to be." June smiled faintly. "Did my children hope for a different result?" Valerie paused. "Honestly? Yes. They expected confusion, hesitation, maybe forgetfulness. They always did underestimate me." The evaluator folded her tablet and stood. "For what it's worth, I believe you made a rational decision." June nodded. "It wasn't emotional. It was protective." Valerie hesitated at the door. "Would you like me to send them a summary report?" June reached for her folder on the counter. "Actually, I'd like to add something first." She slid a printed log across the table, dated entries, phone calls, documents, email printouts, just in case they forget how we got here. By the time Valerie left, the air felt lighter. Angela found June an hour later on the garden patio, trimming the ends off a grocery store bouquet. "Was that who I think it was?" June didn't look up. "Yes. And no, I didn't fail." Angela laughed under her breath. "Of course you didn't." June reached into the bouquet and pulled a bloom that was beginning to brown. "They didn't want answers. They wanted ammunition. I just took it out of their hands." That evening, while June was brushing her hair, her phone buzzed once and lit up the counter. "Benjamin." Voicemail. She played it on speaker while she worked. Through a stubborn knot, his voice calm and professional. "They've retained counsel. Full estate challenge incoming. You ready?" June smiled at her reflection. "Born ready." She ended the voicemail, set down her brush, and folded the towel over her lap. The night was quiet. No wind outside, no hallway chatter, just the soft tick of the bedside clock. She didn't respond to Benjamin right away. She didn't need to. They'd hired counsel. Of course they had. They couldn't take the house back, so now they'd try to take the narrative. The probate summons arrived 2 days later, hand-delivered in a vanilla envelope as June watered the spider plant by her windowsill. The courier didn't say a word, just tipped his cap and left her with the paperwork. The first line jumped like a match strike. "Petition for nullification of deed due to undue influence and elder coercion." Angela's name was highlighted in yellow. Below it, underlined, named beneficiary with suspicious proximity. Angela sat across from June in the courtyard, her hands trembling as she reread the notice. "This makes me sound like a predator," she whispered. June didn't flinch. "It makes them sound desperate." Angela blinked. "Do I need a lawyer?" June passed her a manila folder. Inside, copies of the signed deed, notarized statements, and time-stamped emails. "You need to show up," she said. "I'll handle the rest." The courtroom smelled faintly of old paper and too much air conditioning. Mike wore a navy suit 2 sizes too sharp for sincerity. Trina's blazer looked expensive and brittle. Jenna dabbed at non-existent tears with a tissue she kept folding and unfolding like it was scripted. June walked in without a cane, without a handler, without hesitation. Angela sat 2 rows back, her hands folded tightly in her lap, flanked by 2 of her CNA co-workers who refused to let her go alone. Benjamin adjusted his cuffs and nodded once at June before rising to address the judge. "Your Honor, we are here because 3 adult children believe their mother incapable of making autonomous decisions, yet offer no medical diagnosis, no documented impairment, and no legal precedent for the claim. We offer instead receipts." He placed a single binder on the podium, each tab color-coded, video logs from Zoom calls where June discussed her estate plan, screenshots of group texts. She won't know what hit her. Just get her to sign before Friday. email threads between Trina and a real estate agent dated before the deed transfer. The judge, a woman with hair the color of salt and steel, raised an eyebrow. Do the petitioners have contradictory evidence to present? Mike stood, cleared his throat, then leaned too heavily on charm. Your Honor, our only concern is that our mother may not have fully understood the long-term impact of her decision. We just want to make sure she wasn't taken advantage of. The judge stared at him. You're suggesting she was coerced? Yes. By this caregiver. Angela sat up straighter. June remained still. The judge turned. Mrs. Whitman, would you like to respond? June rose slowly, like she was stepping into warm water. She walked to the witness stand without glancing at her children. Your Honor, I'm not here to apologize for being clear-minded. I'm here because I planned something carefully, and they didn't like it. She took a breath. Angela didn't ask me for anything. My children, on the other hand, asked plenty. Not with words. With assumptions, she pulled a folded paper from her purse and handed it to Benjamin, who passed it to the judge. A typed document. Mental status evaluation. Passed, signed, and certified. Dated 4 days before the deed transfer. Any other questions? June asked. The courtroom went silent. Even Mike looked down. Trina tried one more time. We were trying to protect you. June turned her head. You were trying to control me. There's a difference. The judge flipped through the binder, brows furrowed in thought. At last, she looked up and tapped her pen against the wood. The deed appears to be properly executed, witnessed, and irrevocable. The judge states, the deed appears to be properly executed, witnessed, and irrevocable. The judge's words still lingered in the air when June gathered her things with the same steady grace she'd brought into the courtroom. The deed was upheld. The accusations dismissed. The legacy secure. But victory wasn't vindication. Not yet. June didn't want the courtroom to be the only place where the truth lived. She wanted it to live in daylight. 2 mornings later, she sat with Benjamin on the back patio of the facility, the sound of birdsong mixing with distant leaf blowers. I want the transcripts unsealed, she said calmly, sipping her chamomile. Benjamin blinked. All of them? All of it. Court documents, exhibits, my cognitive eval, even their group texts, especially those. He hesitated. It'll be messy. Good, June replied. They made the mess. I'm just turning on the light. By the end of the week, the county clerk's site had updated, estate dispute, public records available upon request. It didn't take long. The local paper ran the headline that Sunday, elderly widow leaves home to caregiver, disinherits adult children after manipulation attempt. They kept the tone neutral. The facts weren't. The article outlined the court's decision, June's statement on autonomy, and a summary of the group chat messages entered into evidence. She won't last a year. Just get her signature. Use her memory decline as leverage. Below it, a photo of Angela standing in front of the Windmere house, her eyes wide with disbelief, a little girl's hand clutching hers. Angela didn't know the photo had run until she walked into the grocery store and someone pointed at the paper stand. You're the woman from the article, said a woman with a toddler on her hip. The one who took care of her? Angela nodded slowly. I do. The woman smiled. We need more people like you. By the end of the aisle, someone else had paid for her milk. Back at the Windmere house, Angela unlocked the back door to start unloading donated groceries and noticed something odd. Her daughter, Maribel, knelt in front of the kitchen baseboards, her little fingers tugging at the bottom panel of the corner cabinet. Mom, she said, breathless, there's something here. Angela leaned down. The wood popped slightly with pressure. Behind it, tucked into a narrow slat, was a sticky note, yellowed at the edges but unmistakably fresh. Maribel unfolded it with both hands. Written in neat cursive, just 3 words. Welcome home. Angela stood in silence. For a moment, all she could hear was the hum of the refrigerator, the creak of wood returning to rest. She closed her eyes and exhaled. Her shoulders didn't just relax, they lowered in a way they hadn't in years. Across town, consequences rippled. Trina's employer received a call from a board member who read the story. A quiet HR meeting followed. "We understand this is a personal matter," her supervisor said carefully, "but public perception matters, especially in philanthropy." Mike had clients cancel 2 showings. Jenna's Instagram following dropped by a third overnight. None of them called June, not to apologize, not to rage, just silence. The kind that meant the world had shifted, and they knew it. Later that week, June received a letter from a woman she'd never met. "Dear Mrs. Whitman, my sister is a CNA too. She's had her groceries paid for in smiles and spare change. What you did? It changed more than one life. Thank you." Karen W. June folded the letter, pressed it between 2 pages of a hardback journal, and smiled. She never needed applause. She just wanted the story to be true. June watched the morning light slant through her apartment blinds and land on the stack of untouched letters on her desk. Sympathy cards, half-hearted apologies, handwritten guilt wrapped in decorative envelopes. She hadn't opened most of them. She didn't need to. Trina's came first. A voicemail, soft, hesitant. "Hi, Mom. Just wanted to say we've been thinking about everything, about how things unfolded. We know we pushed, too hard. It wasn't fair. Maybe we just misunderstood." June played it twice, not to hear the words, but to listen to what wasn't there. No mention of the house, no mention of the lawsuit, just a vague fog of regret trying to pass itself off as reconciliation. Mike's text followed 2 days later. "Mom, can we talk sometime? No pressure. Just want to clear the air. I miss you." She stared at it until the phone went dark in her hand. There was no air to clear, just silence they had paved themselves. Jenna sent flowers, then a message. "Can we start over? Maybe brunch this time. On me." She included a winking emoji, like they were swapping inside jokes. Like June hadn't seen every transcript, every time-stamped message, every bullet-pointed plan to reclaim her property before she deteriorated. They each framed it differently. Worry, confusion, love. But not one of them said what June knew they meant. "We thought we'd already won. You were just the paperwork." 3 days later, the facility approved their visit request. June didn't dress up, didn't put on lipstick or pearls. She wore her slate gray sweater and left the curtains drawn just enough to let in light, but not clarity. They arrived like tourists, nervous smiles, too many plastic bags filled with fruit, store-bought cookies, and tea she didn't drink. Mike offered a side hug she didn't return. Trina called the suite cute. Jenna complimented the lighting. Not one of them asked how she'd been sleeping, what books she was reading, whether her knee still ached in the mornings. "So," Trina said, placing a tin of lemon shortbread on the side table like it was an offering, "we wanted to say we're sorry. About everything." "Truly?" Mike added. "It got out of hand. We were scared and confused." "We miss you," Jenna said, her smile strained. "It's been hard not having you around." June stirred her tea slowly. "You miss having me where?" The question hung in the room like a low ceiling. There was a long pause before Trina said, "Home, I guess. Things haven't felt the same." June nodded. "Because you tried to turn it into something it never was." Mike leaned forward. "We were just trying to secure the future." "No," June said, her voice even. "You were trying to claim the present, before I was gone." They flinched, just slightly, but none of them denied it. She took her time sipping her tea, then set the cup down gently. "I'm not angry anymore," she said, "but I'm not blind either." "Then what do you want?" Jenna asked, her voice almost a whisper. June tilted her head. "Nothing. I wanted peace. I earned it. I found it." She stood, slow but firm. "Now I want quiet." The visit ended without hugs. The cookies were left behind, unopened. June gave them to the front desk staff on her way back from Tai Chi the next morning. Later that evening, she pulled 3 envelopes from the drawer of her desk. 1 ivory, 1 pale blue, 1 lavender. Each one addressed in her deliberate, looping script. She placed a single note inside each, sealed them with steady fingers, and walked them down to the mailbox herself. Inside, 1 line, handwritten in ink that didn't smudge. "I forgive you, but I don't forget." She mails them each a single envelope. Inside, "I forgive you, but I don't forget." The envelopes were gone, mailed, carried off like seeds in the wind. June didn't expect a reply, not from her children, not in words that mattered. The silence that followed was almost a kindness. She sat at her window the next afternoon, a crossword folded in her lap, when her phone vibrated once. Lily, unknown number. "Hi, Grandma. I know no one asked me to reach out, but I saw what they did. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry, they were awful. I wasn't. I hope you know that." June read the message twice, her throat tightening not with grief, but recognition. Someone had been paying attention. Lily was 17, quiet, artistic, the kind of teenager who drew vines in the margins of her notebooks and actually listened when older people spoke. June had always liked her, even if they'd only seen each other during holidays and birthdays that felt more like transactions. But there had been small moments. Lily asking for second helpings of June's cranberry bread, the way she lingered in the garden when everyone else rushed back to their phones. She texted back, "Come visit, just us, tea and stories, if you still want to hear them." Lily arrived the next Saturday in a canvas jacket, sneakers with mud on the soles, and a nervous smile. They sat at June's small dining table, a pot of Earl Grey between them, the soft scent of lemon biscotti in the air. "You really don't have to pretend," Lily said after a moment. "I know it's weird. Me showing up." June tilted her head. "Is it weird to want truth?" Lily's shoulders dropped an inch. I didn't know how to say it before, but I never liked how they talked to you. Or around you." June smiled gently. "Then say it now." For the next hour, June told her about Daniel. Not the curated stories, the real ones. How he once crashed a canoe into a cattail marsh and proposed ankle-deep in muck. How he cried when she miscarried in '83. How he hated olives but always ate them off her plate because "your happiness tastes better than mine." Lily's eyes glistened. "They never talk about him?" "Not really." "They didn't know him," June said. "Not the version that stayed after the wedding photos." Later that evening, after Lily left, June opened her laptop and logged into the secure trust portal Benjamin had set up months ago. New entry: Lily Carson Education Fund. Amount: $75,000. Use: college tuition, books, or vocational training. Trustee: Angela Ruiz. Beneficiary notified: no. She paused before hitting save, her cursor hovering over the confirm button. Then she pressed it without hesitation. 2 days later, Angela knocked on June's door, carrying a Tupperware of arroz con leche. "I heard someone's planning secret legacies behind my back." June chuckled. "She's the only one who remembered my rose bush." Angela raised an eyebrow. "She's 17, June said, "but her heart's older than most people's bank accounts." That weekend, June's phone buzzed just once. Lily, attached image. A selfie, Lily kneeling in front of the Windmere House's garden, wearing gloves too big for her hands. The soil was dark and turned, the rose bush pruned neatly, already budding. Beneath it a message: "Just wanted you to know I remember the rose bush. I watered it today. Thought he'd like that." Lily sends a photo of herself cleaning the garden. "Just wanted you to know I remember the rose bush." The dirt beneath Lily's gloves had still been damp from the hose when she knelt by the rose bush. The photo of her cleaning it had stayed pinned to June's desk with a magnet shaped like a hummingbird. It wasn't dramatic. It was devotion. Quiet, steady, the kind that didn't need to announce itself to be true. That same quiet began to ripple outward, through front porches, office lobbies, church pews, and late-night kitchen tables where someone would open a folded newspaper and pause mid-coffee sip. People had noticed. And not just the ones who knew June. The first article appeared in the Pine County Gazette, tucked between an obituary and a recipe for squash bisque. Elder widow transfers house to caregiver. Family files, loses probate claim. It should have ended there, but the piece was shared on the Gazette's Facebook page, then picked up by Channel 5 News under the headline, "Not Just a House, One Woman's Final Word on What Family Means." Angela's photo ran beneath it, standing in front of the Windmere House, not smiling, just composed, her eyes wet but unwavering. In the video clip, her voice cracked. "I didn't ask for it. I just showed up. I thought I was helping her, but I think she helped me more." She didn't mention the lawsuit, or June's kids, or the sticky note she'd found under the cabinet with June's looping script, "Welcome home." She just stood there, modest, tearful, unshakably human. That's when the letters started. Some came through the facility's front desk, addressed in blocky cursive or printed on monogrammed stationery. Some arrived by email forwarded from the Gazette. Others were delivered by hand, church friends, old bridge partners, neighbors she hadn't spoken to since Daniel's funeral. One was from a woman named Marion, age 84. "My son kept asking me to get my affairs in order. I thought it meant I should hurry up and disappear. Thank you for reminding me I'm still the author of my life." Another, from a nurse in a nearby town. "We get accused of so much, being gold diggers, manipulators. Your story gave me back some dignity. Thank you for trusting someone like us." Even the local pastor sent a card, handwritten, 3 paragraphs long. "You showed the difference between inheritance and legacy," it read, "between control and care. That takes courage and clarity. May your days be peaceful and your decisions be remembered." Angela read a few of the letters aloud in June's apartment, perched on the arm of the recliner with a bowl of grapes between them. She tried to brush it off, but her voice kept catching. "This isn't about me," she said. June chuckled softly. "That's why they believe you." Angela shook her head. "They keep saying I was brave, but all I did was check on your teacups and make sure the hallway light was off after dinner." "You did it every time," June said. "That's what counts." One afternoon, while June was rereading a letter from a woman who'd changed her power of attorney arrangement after reading the article, a staff member from the facility buzzed at her door. "Package for you," the young woman said. "It's, fancy." June took the silver envelope carefully. Inside was a thick invitation card, embossed in navy and gold. "The Pine County Senior Resource Center invites you to speak at our fall forum, Drawing the Line, Estate Boundaries, and Elder Autonomy. Keynote speaker, June Whitman." She blinked at the words, then read them again. Angela found her still holding it minutes later, her thumb resting on the word keynote like it was made of glass. "They want me to speak," June said softly. "About the house, about all of it." Angela sat beside her. "You should. I'm not a lawyer or an expert." "No," Angela said, voice quiet but firm. "You're what comes after the experts mess it up." June stared out the window for a long time that night. The garden beyond was beginning to crisp at the edges, autumn not quite here but whispering at the trees. She thought of Daniel, of Lily in the dirt, of Angela by the sink, and of all the women out there somewhere between being taken for granted and being erased, waiting for a sign that they were allowed to take back the pen. She accepted their invitation, and after 2 days, she went to the Pine County Senior Resource Center. June was called on the stage for her words. June stood at the front of the senior center's modest auditorium, her hands clasped calmly, a microphone resting lightly in her palm. The room smelled faintly of lemon polish and old upholstery, the air warm with quiet anticipation. Rows of gray and silver heads tilted toward her, some with notepads, others just listening. She hadn't prepared a speech, only a story. She spoke plainly, without bitterness, about the difference between having things and having control, about how silence can sometimes be mistaken for permission. "They thought I wouldn't notice," she said, her voice steady. "But I did, and I planned accordingly." A few nodded. One woman wiped her eyes. When June finished, the room was still for a breath longer than expected. Then came the soft patter of applause, not polite, but grateful. She didn't smile for praise. She smiled because someone, somewhere, might now hold their pen a little firmer. This gave her great strength and satisfaction. After she returned, June brewed herself a strong cup of Earl Grey, the bergamot curling through the quiet. She drank it slowly by the window, watching the late sun soften the edges of everything it touched. Then she slipped into bed, wrapped in stillness, and slept without dreaming. The next day, from her window, June could still see the garden's edge peeking through the trees. The house wasn't visible, not really, but the way the light caught the maple tops made her think of porch lights strung under eaves, laughter echoing off wood slats she once polished herself. She hadn't stepped foot in it since the transfer. She hadn't needed to, because legacy, she was learning, didn't always require your body, just your intention. Angela's invitation was tucked inside a plain white envelope, taped to June's door like a neighborly hello. Maya turns 9, backyard potluck, no gifts, just stories. June wore a lavender sweater and pearl clip-ons Daniel had bought her during a summer trip to Santa Fe. She didn't dress for anyone's attention, just for respect, hers and theirs. The house looked different, not renovated, restored. The porch swing was back, the siding was scrubbed but still sun-softened in places. Flower boxes bloomed over the windowsills like they were part of the walls. June paused at the gate, hand resting on the iron latch she remembered repainting the year Maya was born. The moment she stepped through, a boy zipped past her barefoot, yelling about watermelon slices. A balloon popped behind her. Music, something jazzy and low, played from a speaker hidden in the hydrangeas. "Grandma June!" Maya ran into her arms, sticky-fingered and smiling so hard it looked like her whole face was exhaling joy. "You came!" June nodded, voice quiet. "I said I would, didn't I?" The backyard pulsed with life. A long folding table sagged under casseroles and lemonade pitchers. Paper lanterns dangled from tree branches like stars caught mid-fall. 2 toddlers argued over chalk at the foot of the garden, while a group of older kids passed around Polaroid cameras and giggled at the results. Angela moved like a conductor, refilling plates, tying balloons, brushing frosting off Maya's nose. She wasn't overwhelmed, she was rooted. When she saw June, she stopped what she was doing and walked straight over, arms wide. "You look beautiful," she said, "like you're about to host your birthday party." June chuckled. "Let's not tempt fate." They sat together beneath the pergola. Angela barefoot, June with her cane hooked on the chair arm. "She loves it here," Angela said, nodding toward Maya. "She keeps saying the backyard smells like cinnamon. I think it's the bark chips." June tilted her head. "Could be memory." Angela looked confused. "Some places smell like where you were safe," June said. "Cinnamon's as good a name for it as any." Lily arrived an hour later, carrying a tray of brownies she'd clearly baked herself, edges a little too crisp, middle sinking slightly. She made a beeline for June. "I brought you the corner piece," she whispered. June bit into it and smiled through a full mouth. "Tastes like home." Inside the house, June didn't linger, but what she saw made her chest ache, in the best way. A wall in the hallway held hand-drawn art labeled "Our House Rules," with Maya's misspelled contributions like "No being mean on porpoise." A photo of June and Daniel sat on a bookshelf beside a potted succulent. The dining room table was the same, but there were new chairs, mismatched but sturdy. In the kitchen, the wind chime still hung above the sink, swaying gently even though no window was open. Outside, the sun dipped low. Shadows stretched across the grass. June stood by the dogwood tree, resting her hand against its bark, the same way Daniel used to. Angela brought over a plastic cup of lemonade and stood beside her. "I don't know how to explain what this means," she said. "You don't have to," June replied. "You live it." They didn't speak again for a while. They didn't need to. As June made her way to the sidewalk, the sounds of the party faded, replaced by evening bird song and the low rumble of a car turning the corner. She didn't recognize the vehicle at first. Sleek, gray, newer than anything she'd ever driven. It slowed, then stopped. Trina? She sat in the driver's seat, sunglasses on even though the sun was nearly gone. Her face was unreadable. Her hands stayed on the wheel, her jaw clenched and unclenched like she was chewing something sour. She looked at June, and June looked back. No wave, no expression, no movement. Trina's eyes flicked toward the yard where laughter still bubbled under the trees. Then she hit the gas. The car disappeared down the block without ever pulling in. Trina drives by, sees June on the porch, and drives away without stopping. June stood motionless at the curb long after the SUV disappeared down the block. The tail lights had vanished, but the ache they left behind clung to her ribs like the chill of early dusk. Her hand rested gently on the handle of her cane, but she hadn't leaned on it yet. Peace, she thought, wasn't the absence of confrontation, it was the decision not to follow it. By the time she returned to her studio apartment, her sweater smelled faintly of barbecue smoke and lilacs from the garden. She placed her keys in the little ceramic dish by the door and reached for the envelope she'd left on the counter that morning. Addressed in her own looping script to Women's Transitional Shelter, ATN, Property Donations. The next morning, 2 women from the shelter arrived in a rented van. June greeted them with warm coffee and a labeled layout of her belongings. "This love seat is going to a mother with 2 kids under 5, the younger one said, tears welling up. "She's been sleeping on a floor mat for 6 weeks. June smiled gently. "It's already been broken in by stories and stubbornness. Should hold up fine." They packed the van in quiet coordination. 2 chairs, a coffee table, her old cedar chest, and a vintage reading lamp that still worked if you jiggled the switch twice. When the door closed behind them, her apartment echoed faintly. Not empty, just clear. Later that afternoon, June assembled a small writing desk in the corner by the window. It had arrived flat-packed and awkward, a gift from Lily who'd sent it with a note, "For your next chapter." Literally. The wood smelled new and foreign, unlike the oak and dust of her old furniture, but the surface felt smooth, inviting. She set her favorite pen beside a fresh yellow notepad and titled the first page, "The Room They Applauded." She didn't start with her children, or the house. She started with Daniel, and a grocery store parking lot, and a joke about expired milk that made her fall in love. By Friday, the apartment no longer looked like a downsizing. It looked curated. She had 1 reading chair, 1 patchwork quilt, 1 cabinet for her tea tins, and 1 calendar by the door, where she circled Wednesday evenings in red ink. Angela's kids called it Grandma June Night. She arrived promptly at 7 o'clock with cookies and read from books that ranged from dragons to talking cats to biographies of women who'd changed the world. Sometimes Maya curled up on her lap. Sometimes her little brother fell asleep mid-sentence. But always, they asked, "Will you come back next week?" And June always said yes. Her lawyer's call came the following Tuesday. "Just confirming the drop-off appointment. Still planning to update the directive?" "Yes," June said without hesitation. "I'll be in tomorrow morning." The next day, she wore her navy blouse and spritzed a hint of rose perfume behind each ear, not because anyone would notice, because she would. In the quiet of Benjamin's office, June signed the final page of her updated health proxy. Her hand didn't tremble. "Primary decision maker?" he asked gently, pen hovering. She smiled. "Angela Ruiz." Benjamin looked up. "Not Trina or Mike?" June shook her head. "Angela listens when I speak, and more importantly, when I don't." He nodded, clicked his pen, and filed the paper in the locked drawer. Outside, the sky was the color of linen and open windows. A breeze lifted June's scarf as she stepped onto the sidewalk, lighter somehow, like a cord had finally been untied inside her chest. She paused at the corner, letting the wind brush her cheeks, and whispered to no one in particular, "They gave me a goodbye. I gave myself a beginning." June signs her final health proxy, Angela, not her children. Inside, her apartment felt like peace personified, warm wood, lavender soap, the scent of a lemon candle flickering low. The silence wasn't empty, it was full of choice. June stepped out of her shoes, unwrapped her scarf, and placed her bag on the bench near the coat stand, the leather soft and worn from years of use. She ran a hand along the edge of her small writing desk, oak, scuffed, real, and opened the narrow drawer beneath it. Inside were 3 envelopes, each marked in her tidy cursive: Advanced Directive Burial Instructions, Estate Addendum, no monograms, no flair, just precision, final acts should be clean. She started with the directive. The language was deliberate, unmistakable, no extraordinary measures, no intubation, no heroic attempts to restart what was quietly, naturally ending. But the line she lingered on, the one that mattered most, was near the bottom. Designated Healthcare Proxy, Angela Ruiz. She signed the line beneath it in steady blue ink. There was no shake in her hand, no hesitation, only the calm weight of a woman who'd rehearsed this moment 100 times, alone, in the dark, long before her pen touched the page. The burial instructions came next. No family plot, no heavy tombstone with gold leaf, no casket that would spend eternity in the dirt just to make other people feel they'd done something proper. Instead, cremation. Ashes to be scattered in the community rose garden, the one Daniel had helped maintain before his knees gave out and time took him where she couldn't follow. Quiet? Natural? No speeches, she'd written. But in parentheses, a note just beneath it. If Lily wants to say something, let her. That envelope, too, was signed and sealed, its edges warm from her hand. The estate addendum was last. Months earlier, the formal revision had removed Trina, Mike, and Jenna. June hadn't done it out of bitterness. She'd done it because she believed in audits, of money, of memory, and of love. This is not retribution, she'd written in the legal copy. This is recalibration. But this addendum was personal. Her wedding ring, gifted to Lily with a handwritten note. Wear it if it feels right, or sell it without guilt. Her journals, left to Angela, unopened. Burn, keep, or read. You earned the choice. The photo from her wedding day, to remain framed on Angela's bookshelf if she wanted. Because Daniel would have liked the view. Because family, as she'd come to know, had little to do with DNA and everything to do with witness. And finally, the last page of her memoir in progress, folded neatly behind the letterhead. I was not discarded. I was redelivered. The following Monday, June carried the documents to Benjamin's office herself. She wore the same wool coat she'd worn the day she and Daniel signed their mortgage. The lining was frayed now, but the buttons still fastened tight, like she did. I thought we could courier these, Benjamin said gently, taking the envelopes with both hands. I could, she replied, but I wanted to walk with them one last time. He didn't argue. He checked the seals, placed them into the fireproof file cabinet behind him, and nodded once. They're protected now. Every page she exhaled, a long breath that felt like unlocking something buried behind her ribs. So am I, she said. 2 weeks later, June sat at Angela's kitchen table with a cup of chamomile tea, the kind with little blossoms that unfurled like secrets in hot water. Maya sat beside her, tongue poking slightly from the corner of her mouth as she wrote the days of the week in crayon. The fridge door opened with a soft suction sound as Angela searched for juice, and June's gaze drifted toward the cluster of papers taped to the metal door. Amid shopping lists, spelling quizzes, and a magnet shaped like a tomato, one paper caught her eye. It was a drawing, uneven, childlike. A sun with spiky yellow rays, a stick figure garden, and a smear of green where a tree might have lived. Above it, neatly taped, was a photo. June, kneeling by the rose bush in Angela's backyard, her gloves stained with soil, her face caught in a moment of unguarded laughter. And below it, in Maya's looping, blocky handwriting, our real grandma. June blinked. The tea warmed her palms. She didn't speak. Angela turned, noticed her looking, and simply smiled. No fanfare. No explanation. Just that quiet, sacred feeling of being known. Later that night, in her apartment, June lit the lemon candle again. She opened her journal to the final page and drew a slow breath as the flame danced in the corner of her vision. Then she wrote one last sentence beneath all the others. They clapped when I moved out. But I made sure the door stayed closed behind me. And this time she didn't close the journal. She left it open, right where it could be found.